Okay, so I think we're just about ready to begin. I just want to confirm with Trustee Officer Miller, are we going to be recording this meeting or live streaming the meeting?
Thank you.
We're live streaming.
We are live streaming, that's correct.
Excellent.
And we're just waiting for
We're good
the
to go.
director.
Perfect, okay. Well, let's bring this meeting to order at Standing Committee for Monday, April 19th, 2021. This is Vice Chair Galindo speaking. I'll be chairing this meeting for tonight. I'm going to start with doing roll call of trustees that are in attendance. I believe Trustee Archer gave her regrets, so we'll start with Trustee Bingham.
Present.
Can I get Trustee Buck?
Present.
Trustee Danko?
Present.
Trustee Deeth?
Hello? Sorry, present.
Excellent. Was that Trustee Archer on the line?
Yes, I've been here since 6:30 and I've just got myself unmuted.
Good to know.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm glad you're here. I've marked you down for Standing Committee. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Trustee Johnstone?
Present.
Trustee Miller?
Present, thank you.
Trustee Mulholland?
Present.
Can I get Trustee Tutt?
Present.
That was excellent. Thank you, Trustee Tutt. Looking to our student trustees, Trustee Hessler, are you in attendance?
Present.
And do we have Trustee Zakar in attendance? I believe we have regrets. Do we have Trustee Zeggi? I also believe we have regrets for that one. Okay. So thanks, everybody. So we've done roll call. We're using the same meeting norms that we used in our earlier board meeting. So I'm not going to repeat them just for the sake of time. I'm looking to approve tonight's agenda. I need a mover and a seconder, perhaps. So we'll have Trustee Johnstone move, and we'll get Trustee Miller to second approval of the agenda. Is anyone voting against? Seeing none, the agenda has been approved. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting? Didn't get advance notice, and I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand. So we'll move on to item 5, which is the first item, our first report from staff, which is our school year calendar. So I think I'll turn to Superintendent Stella Jones for that report.
So through the chair, if I could just begin as the director.
Yes, go for it.
So thank you. Before I pass it over to Superintendent Jones, what trustees have in front of them this evening is a recommended action to approve the 2021-22 school year calendars to submit to the ministry post-consultation. I do want to highlight, before I pass over to Superintendent Jones, one of the significant changes trustees will see. In the report, trustees will see that prior to further consultation, we did have 2 PA days scheduled prior to Labor Day on Wednesday, September 1st, and then on Thursday, September 2nd. And then Labor Day is on Monday, September 6th, with the start of students coming to school on Tuesday, September 7th. Further consultation, I thank staff for consulting with our Hamilton Jewish Federation. We are aware that Rosh Hashanah, a very significant religious day for our Jewish community in 2021, does conflict with the first day of school. So just like the Catholic board, we have moved the PA days, and Superintendent Jones will highlight through the rest of the report where we have shifted the days to still be compliant with the regulation and to honor this significant Jewish holiday and to ensure that all students have the same experience on the first day of school. So with that, I will pass it over to Superintendent Jones for the full report.
Thank you, Good evening, and through the chair, I'd like to share the school year calendar report with the trustees. In January, trustees approved the school year calendar to go forward for public consultation. The report before trustees includes a summary of findings from this consultation on page 5-6 that took place from January 25th to February 26th, 2021. In total, 891 responses were collected through this process. Based on the feedback and the consultation process, the following updates have been made to the draft calendars. If you'd like to refer to pages 5-4 and 5-5. You'll also note on page 5-2 that Tuesday, September 7th is now listed as a PA day for students. This will align with the coterminus board, making the first day of school for students Wednesday, September 8th, and will shift the last day of the school year to June 30th, 2022. Also on page 5-2, you'll see the secondary PA day in February has been moved from February 1st to February 2nd to ensure a balance of school days between semester 1 and 2. I have to apologize that there are a couple of typos in the report, and I'd like to mention and correct. On page 5-2, the end date for students should say June 29th, and the last PA day on the same chart should say June 30th. So those two dates are reversed. The end date for students is June 29th. In addition, on page 5-3, under the board-wide professional activity days, the date should say June 30th rather than June 29th. So I really apologize for those errors. The draft calendars have been prepared in compliance with Ministry of Education Regulation 304. Regulation 304 requires school boards to provide a minimum of 194 school days from September 1st to June 30th. School days include instructional days and PA days. For the 2021-22 school year, the total number of school days available from the Tuesday after Labor Day to June 30th is 193. In order to be compliant with Regulation 304, one PA day has been placed prior to the Labor Day holiday, and that is on Thursday, September 2nd. This provides schools the opportunity to front-load professional learning and compliance training prior to the first day of school for students. It's important to note that, as in other years, students will receive 187 instructional days within the school year. As always, school holidays are determined through the ministry and are available publicly through the ministry website. Consultation with the coterminus board has taken place to align PA days where possible. Trustees will see at the top of page 5-3 a summary of the PA days, including those that are aligned with the coterminus board, which are marked with a C. Dates for professional activity days have been established through consultation with the School Year Calendar Advisory Committee, who met in December 2020 as well as on March 24th, 2021, and includes representation from employee groups as well as representatives from the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board Parent Involvement Committee and Council of Home and School Association. In addition, the committee was consulted in April to provide additional input into the revised dates. And the calendar was also shared with the Faith Advisory Committee and reviewed by the equity team. The date placement of PA days has also been carefully reviewed by Executive Council to ensure timely professional learning opportunities to positively influence student learning, achievement, and well-being. This year, the school year calendar process has been delayed a couple of weeks and is due at the end rather than at the beginning of May, Following the outcome of the standing committee meeting, the calendars will be brought forward for approval at next week's board meeting. And appreciating the collaborative efforts and guidance of the School Year Calendar Advisory Committee and Executive Council, combined with the positive support received through the public consultation process, it is recommended that the calendars before you be accepted for submission to the Ministry of Education by May 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Jones, and I appreciate your leadership on this file as well. I'm going to turn to trustees to see if there are any questions. There is a recommended action item here, but I'll see if there's any questions before I look for a mover and a seconder for that recommended action item. So I am seeing a few hands. I believe Trustee Deeth had her hand up first, and I'll create a speakers list. Trustee Deeth?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just have one question. I'm looking through the respondent comments, and there was a couple of comments in regards to staff talking about that if they come back for, here it says 2 day or a day before, prior to the Labor Day weekend, that they lose pay. Here, one of them states they lose 3 days of pay. Is that correct?
I'll turn to the director.
So thank you through the chair to Trustee Deeth. I'll have Superintendent Jamie Nunn respond to it from a human resource perspective. In my time, there's been a few years where Labor Day has situated itself where it has, so it's been required to have professional activity days before. And we do consult with the unions on the advisory committee that indicate they would request that the Friday be a board holiday and have the PA days prior to that. But there's been a question regarding how does it impact potentially staff who may be 10-month employees or be also accessing other funds like employment insurance. So I'll pass over to Superintendent Jamie Nunn to explain how it may or may not impact staff in terms of if they're collecting other resources.
Thank you, Director, and through the chair. With the proposed calendar before the board this evening, our 10-month staff will be required to report 1 day of earnings within their final report to EI prior to the Labor Day weekend. As a result, this will have an impact potentially for some of our 10-month employees, and there is the potential for a salary loss.
Trustee Deeth?
So is there any way around that at all? Or I mean, I know in previous years, like last year, we had PA days prior. So is this something that happens and every time that they come back prior to the Labor Day long weekend? Is there anything that we can do to help them with that?
Turn back to the director.
So thank you through the chair. I'll ask Associate Director Peter Sobran to elaborate as well. I just want to clarify the comment. Staff who are required to come in for that PA day, who are hourly employees, will get paid for that entire day. The impact would be that they would potentially lose a day of employment insurance because they did work that day, but they are paid for that day. But I'll ask Associate Director Peter Sobran to elaborate a bit more, as he has had oversight of the school year calendar over the previous years. Associate Director Sobran.
Thank you, and through the chair, so you are correct, Director, that there have been previous years where it has been required that PA days occur prior to Labor Day, and as Superintendent Nunn has indicated, in each of those years, staff have been informed to Trustee Deeth's observation. Comments have been made in the past as well But as the Superintendent of Human Resource Services has indicated, this is the situation that we find ourselves in terms of having an adequate number of days before Labor Day in order to accommodate all of the required days for the school year calendar.
Trustee Deeth, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, sorry. So just clarifying. So the director said, which I understand is if they're not, if they're not, or if they're working that day, they get paid for that day, but obviously they lose EI for that day because they are working. So that, I understand that. But according to this comment, they're saying that they would lose 3 days pay for that week because of the way it falls. So I'm just clarifying, is that, if that's correct?
Director?
So through the chair, through the trustee, it's not my understanding that they don't lose the 3 days pay, but they would lose the 1 day that they would require to come to work. But we can take that away to seek further clarification, but that's not my understanding. I'll ask if Associate Director Peter Sovereign has any further insights, and Superintendent Jamie Nunn as well after, but I'll ask Associate Director Peter Sovereign because I know that's been not the first time that we've had this situation, and it is at request of our labor partners to have the board holiday on the Friday prior to the PA day. I'll start with Associate Director Peter Sovereign first, then if Superintendent Jamie Nunn has anything further to add.
Thank you, Director, and through the chair, you are correct that in the past years where this situation has arisen, we have taken our lead in consultation with our union partners to ensure that any staff that would be in this situation, that in order to still fulfill the requirements for the school year calendar and at the same time ensure that they aren't in any way unfairly penalized. These are the adjustments that we've made. This year's calendar reflects the same process and the same number of days as has been done in the past when we've required to have the days prior to the Labor Day long weekend. And as Superintendent Jones has indicated, consultation has included all of our union partners, including those who represent members who are 10-month employees.
Trustee Deeth, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll turn to Trustee Johnstone now.
Through the chair, I just wanted to say thank you to staff for the consultation process. I did hear from some members of the Jewish community who appreciated the opportunity to make changes or to suggest changes to our calendar. So anyway, I just wanted to note the significance of that process and to pass along the appreciation from some of the community members. Thank you.
I'm not sure, Director Figueredo, if you want to respond to that comment.
So through the chair,
Otherwise, I can...
well, through the chair, appreciate that comment. I want to thank staff who did connect with our Jewish community. One we've had a critical friendship with for many years with Madeline Levy, and also with Gustavo Reinberg, the Executive Director and CEO of the Hamilton Jewish Federation. We did consult with both, and that consultation is reflected in the report that Superintendent Jones has brought forward you this evening. So thank you through the chair, and thank you for Trustee Johnstone's comment.
Thank you. I'll turn to Trustee Buck, who had her hand up earlier. Trustee Buck, I'm not sure if you still have your question there.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just I'm thinking of this PA date on the 7th. Are we still going to be requiring non-Jewish staff to participate in professional activities on that day, or is that in essence kind of like a lost professional activity day?
Turn to the director.
So through the chair, we have a duty to accommodate for our staff. So if we have staff who are Jewish, regardless if that day is a instructional day or a PA day, we're required to accommodate them and respect their religious day of worship. So if they are absent from work, then we'll need to ensure whatever learning on that day is provided on an alternate work day for them. The critical part of this was to ensure that all of our students and staff had the first day with their students and provide the same opportunity. So we will accommodate as required through our policies and under the Ontario Human Rights Code. Through the chair.
Thank you. Trustee Buck, does that answer your question? I'm not sure if you have any follow-up.
Yes, actually, no. Sorry, the intent of my question was, I think I didn't articulate myself very well. Of course, any of our, those in religious communities on religious days for them, of course, the expectation is that that would be their priority and that we can accommodate. So that wasn't really my question. I'm just wondering about using a professional activity day to help support the religious accommodation for folks. Are we able to add another professional activity day later on? My question is more about, we have the scheduling, I guess you could say, for certain days of the year. We only have so many days that we can do professional activities with our in-school staff. So my question is more like, are they also missing out on good learning that they would benefit from? So I think back, maybe an example would be when we did math, for instance, where it was a very intensive day for staff to learn math. Whatever the topic happens to be on September 7th, 2021, are they going to miss out entirely, or is there kind of like a makeup for them so that they also have the benefit of that learning that would normally have happened?
We'll turn to the director for that question again.
So thank you. Through the chair, if I'm understanding Trustee Buck's question clearly, when we're referring today, we're referring to our staff who are Jewish, and if whatever learning on that day, will we provide them another opportunity to learn whatever information they've missed? And the answer is yes. When I state around accommodating, it's not only accommodating them to respect their day of worship on that day, but it's also to make sure they have the same opportunity to learn whatever information or learning that occurred on that day on another subsequent day. And that day might be an instructional day where we provide an occasional teacher and we provide that learning opportunity for them on a different day. I hope that through the chair that answers the Trustee Buck's question.
Trustee Buck?
Yes, it does answer the question. Thank you to the director for that fulsome answer.
Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone. I do see Trustee Deeth's hand up. Do you have a follow-up question, Trustee Deeth?
No, sorry, I left it up. Sorry.
That's okay. I wasn't sure if it was from before. I'll turn to Trustee Archer. I'm not sure if you're able to put your hand up or unmute yourself this time. Just noting the technical issues we had earlier. Did you want to ask any questions? That was for Trustee Archer.
No, I'm good, thanks. I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. All righty, and I'll turn to our student trustees. Not sure if Trustee Hessler has any questions, comments before we move. Hearing none. I do need a mover and a seconder. I probably should have gotten those two earlier. For moving this report, I'll get Trustee Buck and I'll get Trustee Miller to second that report, with the recommended action item being that the draft 2021-2022 school year calendars be approved for submission to the Ministry of Education And I do want to just quickly echo the comments that my colleagues made throughout this process, which is that it's never easy. This process is never easy. It's difficult to gather many voices and consult the communities and try to find a balance between what is operationally feasible versus what we need to accommodate for. So I appreciate the work that has taken place behind the scenes, and once again, the leadership of Superintendent Jones on that as well. So on that motion, is anyone voting against? We'll do a negative vote. Does anyone vote against approving the school year calendars? Seeing no dissent, the motion passes unanimously. So now let's move on to school naming reports. At this point, I will be turning the chair to Chair Danko, seeing as how I believe I'll probably be bringing forward a recommendation for the first school naming report. I'm not sure, Chair Danko, if you want me to give it to you now, or if maybe we'll wait for the report to start, and then afterwards we'll do it.
Either way is fine with me. I think staff will bring forward the report, and if you want to turn it over at that time.
Perfect. Let's do that. So I'll turn it to the Director, Cirillo, for item 6, school naming reports. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, always exciting to bring a report of a naming of a new school. Trustees can see on page 6A-1, there's a recommended action there. And I'm going to pass it over to Superintendent Jones, who's led this important engagement work. So to Superintendent Jones, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, and through the chair. I'd like to ask trustees to refer to the report on page 6A-1, requesting consideration of the submission by the School Naming Advisory Committee for the new school community at the Collegiate Site. The recommended name from the Naming Advisory Committee is Collegiate Elementary School. The advisory committee met virtually on February 18th and April 8th, 2021, to discuss and consider the public consultation report and all names suggested. According to the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board's policy, the naming of school process will begin at the closure of 2 or more schools and consolidation into a new build on an existing or new site. As part of the Lower Stony Creek Accommodation Review, the Board of Trustees approved the closure of Green Acres and R.L. Hislop pending ministry and board funding for construction at the Collegiate Site. On June 19, 2017, the Ministry of Education announced funding in the amount of $6 million to support the revitalization of the school at the Collegiate Avenue site. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board approved an additional $4.3 million in funding to support the project, to create a 213 pupil place K-8 elementary school at the Collegiate Avenue site. The new school is scheduled to open for students in September 2021. Names for the new school were solicited from stakeholders through a public consultation process. The consultation survey was posted from November 16th, 2019 to January 14th, 2020 to January 14th, 2021, and resulted in 104 responses with 30 unique names suggested. I'd like to thank all members of the School Naming Advisory Committee listed within the report, including Area Trustee Carol Pankin-Miller and Trustee Cam Galindo, parents, staff, and students from both Green Acres and R.L. Hislop for participating. Included with this report, trustees will see a summary of public consultation findings on page Appendix A-1, and a description of names from the public consultation provided by the Hamilton Public Library on page 6A-4. The following name is presented for consideration. The committee believes the name upholds the guiding principles for the naming of Hamilton Wentworth District School Board schools. Collegiate Elementary School. The original Collegiate Avenue School is located in Lower Stony Creek on Collegiate Avenue, situated between Queenston Road and King Street, and celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2005. The new school community will be located on the original Collegiate Avenue school site, and although newly updated, retains some of the original building. That's the end of my report regarding the naming recommendation for the Collegiate Site School.
Thanks so much, Superintendent Jones. I appreciate it. At this time, I'll turn it over to Chair Danko to facilitate chairing of this part of the meeting.
Thank you. So we'll be looking for a motion to approve the report, including the action item, which the recommended action is to maintain the name Collegiate Elementary School for the Collegiate Avenue site. And so that's moved by Trustee Galindo, seconded by Trustee Bingham. And I'll open the floor up. Actually, I'll go to Trustee Galindo to speak to the motion first.
Thank you. Through the chair, it's my honor to bring forward the motion to rename Collegiate Elementary School to Collegiate Elementary School. It was an honor and pleasure to serve as one of the trustees throughout the school naming process. It brought back memories to the process that we went through for Eastdale Elementary School, which, as you know, was renamed Eastdale Elementary School. And it seems to be a trend for this particular neighborhood to find, or at least keep some of the history of the previous school. I don't think folks were overly excited with the idea of renaming it Collegiate Elementary School 2.0. But regardless, for that reason, I appreciate the work that went on behind the scenes, and again, the work that Superintendent Jones and the community brought to the table. That's all I have to say on that motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I'll just open the floor. Are there any questions or comments from trustees or student trustees? Trustee Miller?
Thank you. And through the chair, I just wanted to say this one seems really fitting. Sometimes simplicity is best, and particularly if the community feels that this is the appropriate recommendation. In this situation, I think it's wonderful to have a chance to just honor the history that has already been there, particularly because the school site will retain a portion of the original school. So I imagine, that history is very, very intertwined with the local community, and I support the recommendation as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, I don't see anyone else on the speakers list, and I'll just echo the comments and thanks to the Naming Advisory Committee and to our Superintendent Estella Jones for their work on this. I'm sure the community is looking forward to moving forward with the new location. So to the motion to approve the recommended action, is anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes, and I will turn the chair back over to Vice Chair Galindo.
Thank you, Chair Danko. I appreciate it. There's a part B to this report, so we'll turn it back to perhaps the director for the Glen Site school naming report. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm just going to pass it right over to Superintendent Jones, who also led this naming of a new school as well. Superintendent Jones, thank you.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I would ask trustees to review the report, Report 6B, and request consideration of 3 submissions for the school naming of the new elementary school being built at the Glen site. The recommended names from the naming committee are Corporal Nathan Cirillo Elementary School, Gord Edgar Downey Elementary School, and Viola Desmond Elementary School. The School Naming Advisory Committee met virtually on February 11th to discuss and consider the public consultation report and all names suggested. According to the board's policy, the naming of school process will begin at the closure of 2 or more schools and consolidation into a new build on an existing or new site. This was part of the East Hamilton City Accommodation Review where the Board of Trustees approved the closure of Glen Echo, Glen Bray, Sir Isaac Brock, and Elizabeth Bagshaw, pending Ministry of Education funding for a new school on the Glen Site. The new school will accommodate students from Glen Echo, Glen Bray, Sir Isaac Brock, Elizabeth Bagshaw, as well as Sir Wilfrid Laurier. On June 19, 2017, the Ministry of Education announced funding for a new $15.5 million build, a 682 pupil place K-8 elementary school beside the current Glen Bray School. The new school is on schedule to open for students in September of 2021. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board solicited suggestions for names of the new elementary school from stakeholder groups through the completion of an online survey posted from November 16th to January 14th and resulted in 120 responses with 15 different names suggested. I'd like to thank all members of the School Naming Advisory Committee who are listed within the report, including Area Trustee Carol Pankin-Miller and Trustee Ray Mulholland, as well as the parent, staff, and students from Glen Echo, Glen Bray, Sir Isaac Brock, Elizabeth Bagshaw, and Sir Wilfrid Laurier. Included with this report is a summary of the public consultation results, labeled Appendix A-1, and a description of names from the public consultation provided by the Hamilton Public Library on page 6B-4. The following names are presented in alphabetical order for consideration. The families of the names mentioned have been contacted and given approval for the use of their names. The committee believes all names uphold the guiding principles for the naming of Hamilton Wentworth District School Boards. Regarding Corporal Nathan Cirillo, he was born December 23rd, 1989 and died October 22nd, 2014. Corporal Nathan Cirillo was a Class A reservist of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders of Canada from Hamilton, Ontario. He was killed in the Parliament Hill shootings that occurred on October 22nd, 2014 in the Parliamentary Precinct in Ottawa. He was guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier at the National War Memorial when he was shot. The city named an Ancaster leash-free dog park after Nathan Cirillo in 2015. Regarding Gord Edgar Downey, he was born February 6, 1964 and passed away October 17, 2017. Gord Edgar Downey was a Canadian rock singer, songwriter, musician, writer, and activist, most famously known as the lead singer and lyricist for The Tragically Hip from 1984 until his death. He's widely regarded as one of the most influential and popular artists in Canadian music history and was involved with environmental activism and Indigenous affairs. The Assembly of First Nations honored his work on reconciliation by endowing him with a Lakota spirit name, Wakapi Omani, or Man Who Walks Among the Stars. Gord and the band were also named to the Order of Canada. Hamilton City Council voted to commemorate Gord with a plaque at the First Ontario Centre. Gord was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor in 2015 and died of cancer in 2017 at the age of 53. Regarding Viola Desmond, she was born July 6, 1914 and passed away on February 7, 1965. Viola Desmond was an African-Canadian civil rights activist and successful businesswoman from Nova Scotia. In 1946, she challenged racial segregation at a movie theater by sitting in a whites-only seating area and refusing to leave. The case went to court, and Viola was convicted of a minor tax violation for the difference between the seat she paid for and the one she occupied, even though she had offered to pay for the full price of the ticket. Her case was one of the most highly publicized cases of racial discrimination in Canada and helped start the modern civil rights movement in Canada. Viola was pardoned posthumously in 2010. Since then, Canada Post has issued a commemorative stamp in her honor. She became the first Canadian woman to be featured alone on a Canadian banknote, has been named a National Historic Person and became the first woman of color to be featured in a Heritage Minute. That concludes my report regarding the Glen School Naming Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Jones. So at this point, I think I'll turn to Trustee Mulholland to perhaps entertain a motion to select one of the three recommended names here. I have been told that Viola Desmond Elementary School did receive almost more than double the votes than the other two options for this recommended school site, but I'm not sure if Trustee Mulholland is looking to bring a motion to name it Viola Desmond, or if he has another motion in mind. Trustee Mulholland, what are your thoughts?
Well, if I get this now, I'm leaning towards Corporal Nathan Cirillo, the Hamiltonian living and born in East End, who was guarding our democracy on Parliament Hill. That's who I'm putting forward.
Thank you, Trustee Mulholland. So what we'll do is, so the motion on the table by Trustee Mulholland is to name the school Corporate Nathan Cirillo Elementary School. We'll have a discussion / debate on that motion. Then we'll move to a vote. If the vote passes, great. If it fails, then I'll look to a trustee to bring forward another motion for one of the other two names that are remaining. So Trustee Mulholland, I need a seconder for your motion. Does anyone want to second Trustee Mulholland's motion? I saw Trustee Buck raise her hand, so assuming that's okay, I'll turn to you, Trustee Mulholland, for your opening statement.
I believe the Superintendent Jones laid out all the information trustees require. One's a war hero, one is an activist, and the other is an artist. So we have them all. We have also the one I'm leaning towards is because he's a Hamiltonian. He was born and raised 3 kilometers away from the school site. He was protecting our democracy when he was gunned down in front of a monument. I mean, what more could we ask for the name of a school? That's my comments.
Thank you, Trustee Mulholland. Trustee Buck, you're seconding the motion. I'm not sure if you want to go next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would love to go next. For the same reasons that Trustee Mulholland just laid out, I think that the committee brought forward 3 perfect names. It's a tough choice to choose between any of the 3, but when I think of Hamilton and the local legacy that Corporal Nathan Cirillo has left us with, it's, to me, an excellent choice for this school site. As my colleagues know, the military is near and dear to my own heart, as my husband has served in the armed forces. And when I think about the event that tragically took Corporal Cirillo's life so early, there's heroism in it. He was posted in a place of honor. Really, it speaks to his character that he was chosen to be guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier in Ottawa. The Argyles are a fixture. So he served with the Argyles. The Argyles are a fixture in Hamilton, and their legacy goes back many, many moons. And I just think that this would be a wonderful addition to our mosaic of school names.
Thank you, Trustee Buck. I'll turn to my colleagues to see if anyone has any comments or questions that they have. with the motion on the floor. I see Trustee Deeth's hand. Go ahead, Trustee Deeth.
Thank you. I have a question. And not that I'm, against Corporal Nathan Cirillo or Viola Desmond, but in looking at the responses, for Collegiate, it was the same, that it was the #1 response, and why we simply went with Collegiate. With the Glen site, it looks like 21 of the responses were for Glen, the Glen name. So I'm just wondering why it didn't come forward as one of the 3.
That's an excellent question. I assume that the difference probably happened during the discussion that the committee followed during the naming process, where they would vote during the meeting to determine what the recommendations that are coming forward will be. But I'll turn to Superintendent Jones for that response.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. There were a number of names that were suggested that included Glen as part of the name. And through the process, the committee decided to go with the names of people and try to honor their contributions that way. Only, I think there were 2 names in the very first round of voting, which included names that included the Glen portion, but it quickly shifted into the 3 names that you see in front of you today.
Trustee Deeth, does that answer your question?
It does. It's just that, and I understand the process, obviously, and I want it to be reflective of what the community wants. It's just that based on, the reasons that we named Collegiate, it seems to be similar for the Glen site, but that it didn't come forward in that. I know on naming schools after names, there's always a concern, but and not with those 2 names. I think particularly Captain Cirillo or Viola Desmond would be a concern. But no, that's just my comments around that. Thank you.
Definitely a good observation. Thank you, Trustee Deeth. I think I saw Trustee Tutt. You had your hand up earlier. Did you have a comment?
Yes, Vice Chair Galindo. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly.
Excellent, thank you. So with regards to this, not to take anything away from anyone's contribution to the country or their service, or their connection to the city. Fine people have been suggested and put forward. It's actually a pleasure to vote on this. But as far as my experience has been on the board, what I've seen is we typically have taken into consideration what the community has supported. And in this case, to me, it seems that they've overwhelmingly voted for Viola Desmond. So I don't know why we would maybe shift from that. I'm sure there might be some cases in the past where, trustees have gone another way. But, just looking at it even keel and staying consistent, it seems like the community has spoken here. And so if the community has spoken, why wouldn't we, we honor or support their voice for the choice of a name for a brand new school? Those are my comments, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Tutt. I saw Trustee Miller's hand up a few moments ago. Trustee Miller, did you want to go?
Yes, and thank you through the chair. I have the same reservations actually as Trustee Deeth. I was going to ask, either the trustees who participated in the public consultation or the superintendent for some clarity around whether a geographical name had been discussed. But we've obviously seen the result of that question. With all due respect to the three individuals named here for consideration tonight, because they are all deceased. So with my utmost respect for them and their legacy, I have real reservations around naming any of our schools after anybody. And I say that not to undermine any of their individual contributions to history or to our country or to our local area, but more because I think it's just better practice to not associate any individual with institutions, because history changes, and we've seen the evolution of names that were considered appropriate decades ago, then turn out to not be, which is not to say that is at all the case with any of these individuals. I just think it's best practice for an institution as public and as wide-serving as ours to look perhaps to community-based names, land-based names, or the history of the school, as we saw earlier tonight with Collegiate. That's where I would generally land. But if tonight is the conversation around which of the names here presented tonight, if we're not going to be looking at any consideration for a geography or geographical name, then I do feel I do have to echo Trustee Tutt's sentiments that if the list is before us and the list carries there's one definitive name that carries the majority consensus or the majority support from the participants, then I feel that if we are going to entertain any of these names, then we do have a responsibility to look to the recommendation that the committee put forward. So that's where I'm at. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. I saw Trustee Johnstone, you had your hand up, and then Trustee Danko, I'll go to you next.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think I feel like some of the comments that were just made were very much echo those that I do strongly feel. I think that the challenge that we're running into, and in particular, I think as we go through school naming, we do need to look at revisiting our policy. As has been noted by some of my colleagues around the table, that some names do not always age well, that time changes. And I would, when I look at where the community has put forward their voice, I think first and foremost through the survey. And through the survey, there was a strong request for mention of the Glen Site. And after that, if we are going to value the voice of community, then I am going to lean towards Viola Desmond in order to honor the voice of the community. I think that, and I will note as well, when we look across our city and we look at the names of our institutions, there is an inequity in terms of what I would say the representation of names. I think that, and when I say that, individuals who are coming from, you look at gender, you look at sexual orientation, you look at class, you look at race, ethnicity. And by and large, as we talked about in the last round of looking at naming our schools. And even when we're looking at naming schools where they're tied to geography, geography is often associated with those who could own land, who could afford to own land at a specific period of time. So I think that first and foremost, that we need to absolutely do a review of our school naming policy. But in the absence of that, and in order to give direction and to our staff and to assure the community that a name has been chosen, I will be leaning towards Viola Desmond if the first motion does not pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Johnstone, for those comments. I'll turn to Trustee Danko. You had your hand up a few moments ago. Not sure if someone is muted. Trustee Danko, are you still on the line with us?
So sorry.
That's okay.
I usually do a good job at this. As I was saying, that much of what I was going to say has been said. I echo comments about, the need to revisit our naming policy to consider how might we adjust it. I've long stated that I don't believe we should name schools after people for a number of reasons, but given we have three names before us, they are all names that I could absolutely support for a school name. I did have a question since I was not able to be part of the naming committee. So through the chair, maybe to the superintendent, was there a sense of a preference for names? I know that they're brought to trustees in this way based on our policy, but oftentimes there is some clear consensus that's brought to us as well.
Thank you, Trustee Danko, for the comments as well. Just taking a look to see if there were any other first-time speakers. Trustee Deeth, I do see your hand up.
Did you hear me? I had a question.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
That was to
I'll turn to the director. Yes. Superintendent?
Yes, thank you for the question. And through the chair, there was the greatest number of support for Viola Desmond. The combined votes for the other two names was still less than what the number of supporting votes for Viola Desmond.
Thank you. And through the chair, so then the other thing that I would do then is to look at our guiding principles. So I believe that all three names absolutely reflect our vision, our mission, our community composition. They're inspirational. They would have acceptance, and they're appropriate. And they have both either local Canadian or local or Canadian significance. But the pieces that jump out to me is which name reflects our current commitments. And when I look at the work that we're doing right now around our equity action plan, around the governance reviews we're doing with respect to anti-racism, anti-oppression, and then when I look at where possible and appropriate, it addresses underrepresented groups. And to have someone named who is a person of color who, in fact, had a significant role in shifting society in Canada, I think that I would also, if the motion fails, be in support of Viola Desmond Elementary School. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Danko. I'll turn back to Trustee Deeth. I assume your hand was up from earlier. Is that correct?
No, and I think Trustee Danko, through the chair, answered my question. The question was answered. I was just wanting to. You made reference to the Viola Desmond name being voted on twice as much, so that was clarified. So that's what I was seeking clarification on, and I think for that reason I would support that name as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Deeth. I'll turn to Trustee Archer again. I'm not sure if you're able to put your hand up or if you had any questions, but I just wanted to check in with you, Trustee Archer.
No, I'm good, thank you.
And Student Trustee Hessler, what are your thoughts? I'm not sure if you have any comments you'd like to make. Not hearing anything. I'm actually just going to double check to confirm whether Student Trustee Hessler is on the line. Yeah, I'm seeing you here, but I'm not hearing you. So I'll assume that you don't have any comments. I'll add myself to the speakers list too. I certainly echo a lot of the comments that were made in support of Viola Desmond Elementary School. I think, when we look at the work that we're doing as a school board, the importance of having someone who belongs to the BIPOC community, and at the end of the day, I'd be happy with any of the three names if that are being brought before us, but I do have a preference for what the advisory committee clearly identified as what their top preference would be, and to me that is an extension of what that community is voicing. But those are the comments I'll make here. Does anyone else have any other comments before we move to a vote? Trustee Mulholland, did you want to make any closing comments?
Well,
yes. Any closing comments?
I can't get it on.
Oh, no, you're good. I can hear you.
Can you? Okay, yes. There it is. No, not really comments. My first choice still stands based on what's said. I was quite confident that I was going to, my motions will be turned down. I pretty well I could have named before the discussion started. However, I want everybody to know you've discussed everything, but exactly what the motion is. There's three names put on the floor by a statutory committee of this board, a community committee, and that's what we're going to discuss. We discuss everything else but. So anyway, call the vote. I'd like to see who's going to vote against this, my support.
Excellent. Let's do that. So on the motion that Trustee Mulholland has placed on the table, that we name the Glen Site as Corporal Nathan Cirillo Elementary School, I think I'll do a yay vote first. Who is voting in support of this motion? And we'll keep track that way. So I have Trustee Mulholland as a yes. I have Trustee Buck as a yes. I'm just looking for a few more hands. Trustee Archer is a yes. Is anyone else voting in support of the motion?
Yes, Trustee Bingham. My hand is up. I don't know if you can see it or not.
I can see it now, yes. Thank you. So Trustee Bingham. I have Trustee Beath in support of the motion. I have Student Trustee Hessler in support of the motion. And did I catch everyone? That's Mulholland, Buck, Archer, Bingham, Deeth, and Hessler. I'm not seeing it. It can be difficult to see the hands on the device I'm using. Yes, okay. So I'll turn to the trustee officer. Assuming I haven't missed anyone, that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 10. So the motion would fail. But I'll turn to Trustee Officer Miller first to make sure that I accurately captured that. The motion has failed with 5 out of 10.
Thank you, and through the chair. Thank you, and through the chair. That's correct.
Thank you. So at this point, I'll turn to trustees to see if there's another motion for perhaps one of the other two names for this school site. I do see Trustee Mulholland, your hand is up. I'll turn to you, Trustee Mulholland. So I can't hear you yet.
My hand's not up.
Oh, do you have any comments? It was up, now it's down. You don't have a comment, but since it's you were part of the process, do you have another motion you'd like to bring to the table for one of the other two names?
Oh, you want me to make another motion? And
I can turn to another trustee.
And who's the other two
So we have Gord Edgar Downey or Viola Desmond.
Desmond. I put Viola Desmond on the floor. I'll have a winner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Mahalan. So on the motion to name the site Viola Desmond Elementary School, I need a seconder for that motion. I have Trustee Johnstone seconding that. So I'll turn it back to Trustee Mahalan to see if you want to make any arguments for Viola Desmond.
No, everything's been said. Let's do. I think we know where we're going, so let's get on with it.
Sounds good. Any other comments that trustees would like to make before we bring this to a vote? I'm not seeing any hands. So perhaps we'll bring it to a vote then. On the motion to name the site Viola Desmond Elementary School, can I get, we'll do a negative vote this time. Who is voting against the motion to name the site Viola Desmond Elementary School? That is being moved by Trustee Mahalan, seconded by Trustee Johnstone. Who is opposed to the motion? I'll get you to raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands. It looks unanimous. Going once, going twice. And the motion passes unanimously. Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you, Trustee Mahalan, for leading us through that process. Yeah, that was the winner. And thanks so much to Superintendent Jones for helping us through that process. It's always nice when we have an opportunity to select a new name for a school. So at this time, I'll now move to item number 7 on our agenda, which is regarding our safe schools, mapping out community supports. I'll turn this to the Director of Education, Figueredo.
Thank you. Through the chair, trustees will see in their package on page 7-1 an update regarding mapping out community supports after trustee motion last spring around the termination of the police liaison officer program. What you'll see this evening is an updated report. Although COVID has provided a bit of challenges as we've been pivoting, we're still moving the plan forward. Tonight is a monitoring update with the final report of mapping out community supports and the recommendations coming in June. I'm going to pass to Superintendent Sharon Stefanian to walk, and she'll probably share the screen with trustees of a slide deck that was emailed out by trustee officer later this afternoon. So I will pass over to Superintendent Stefanian for a brief update on our progress to date and what actions are still to come. Superintendent, thank you.
Thank you, Director Figueredo. So first, I'm going to just check that I am in fact sharing my screen. Can I just get confirmation from the chair? And that you can hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you perfectly, and we can see your slideshow. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, and thank you, Director Figueredo, for the introduction. As the director said, I'm here this evening to provide a monitoring report update for the trustees with respect to mapping out the community supports for the delivery of program in our schools following the termination of the police liaison program last spring. So I'm just going to... I'm just checking through the chair. Did the slide change for you?
Yes, it did.
Perfect, thank you. just navigating two monitors, so I want to make sure that you have the right information on the screen. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going back through the history because this is the third monitoring report that we've provided for trustees. Trustees are very much aware of the motions that were passed last June, terminating the police liaison program in HWDSB schools, and some of the work that staff have undertaken since that time. This evening, I would like to present with trustees the work that has taken place since the last time we were with you, providing an update in January. I will just provide as a bit of a reminder that from the time the program was terminated in June, police liaison or police involvement in HWDSB schools has solely been limited to that which is required under Safe Schools and Secure Schools legislation, as well as what is outlined in the provincial school board police protocol. And those are the only activities in which police are in HWDSB schools. I won't go through this list. Trustees have seen it before, but that this list covers the legislated areas in which our schools are required to make contact with police. And of course, that includes preparation for lockdowns and bomb threats, etc. What I really wanted to do this evening was provide trustees with an update of the work that staff have undertaken, as I said, since we were together in January. As the director has indicated, certainly COVID-19 has lengthened some of the time that it is taking for us to engage in community consultation. But the other reason that our community consultation is taking a little longer than expected is because of the richness of information that we are receiving through those consultation sessions. They are virtual. I'll highlight this evening for trustees the sessions that have happened and the sessions that are yet to happen. But we really felt that it was important that we prioritize those conversations and hearing from community over trying to reach a timeline that was going to shorten the engagement and the authentic voice that we were gathering from our community partners. So we were hopeful that we would have our final report for trustees this evening. As I mentioned, we are still in the consultation process, but we are on track to bring forward a final report in June. What you have on the slide and also on page 7-2 in the report are the revised timelines. You will note that during the month of February and March, we have been working extensively with our community-based working group, which I'll share some more details on that group in just a moment. Through March and into April, we have been engaging in consultation with targeted community groups. This slide says 9 groups were planned. We've actually expanded that to 11 based upon the 9 that were planned, but feedback within sessions. We've added 2 additional sessions, and there will ultimately be a thought exchange with the final report coming forward to trustees in June. And as I had mentioned, that's a revised date. So the Partner Mapping Working Group, this group is made up of membership from the First Nation, Métis and Inuit Advisory Committee, as well as the Human Rights and Equity Advisory Committee. At this table, we have students, parents, guardians, caregivers, and community partners. I just want to publicly thank this incredible group. In the initial meetings that we have had that have provided the foundation for the community engagement, they were very giving of their time. They put forward great ideas and suggestions that have formed the guiding principles for our consultation work, and really do appreciate their willingness to put their ideas on the table. And a special shout out to the students who are part of that process. They've been amazing. Haven't missed a meeting and continue to contribute. So the primary goal of the working group, and again, this is not new information. We've seen this information over our previous monitoring reports. Their work is really about planning and determining how we're going to facilitate, or how we are facilitating gathering of input and voice from various community groups and community partners related to the outcomes of FIRST. As we think towards the selection of partners to provide programming in our schools, specifically programs that previously were provided through Police Liaison Program. What should we be considering as criteria in order to select those partners? And in addition to that, to ensure that that work is undertaken in a way that is safe, supportive, and inclusive of students, particularly our students who are Indigenous, Black, racialized, students who are accessing special education supports, and students who identify as Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA+. We need to ensure that as partners come into our building, they're doing the work in a way that is safe and inclusive, and that there is intentionality within which how that safety is built in right from the planning stage. So as I had mentioned, over a series of meetings, the working group developed a number of guiding principles with respect to the engagement or the consultation with the groups. They spoke about the importance of, as we bring people together, being very clear on the intention of why we are seeking their input and the purpose of why they are coming together. The importance of valuing participants for their lived experience and their expertise. Everyone is bringing something to the table, and we need to ensure that we create structures that allows for all of those voices to be heard, and that there are a variety of ways in which we are gathering those voices. Education represents different things for different groups, so important to keep that in mind through the consultation process. When we talk about doing the work in a safe way, the group talked about the fact that it's important for us to keep in mind that safety is not the same for everyone, and we really need to be thinking about engagement in a way that is safe for all of the participants, that an opportunity at the end of the engagement session is for individuals to make reflective comments, but then also the ability to be able to provide further input away from the table is extremely important. And we also know, and we've heard from community, the importance about, we've been through, as we work through this process, when we land an outcome in June, be sure that we come back and we share with participants what we heard them say and what we did as a result of what they've said. So this particular slide, again, is just providing a bit of an overview for trustees. On the far right-hand side, the areas of internet safety, social media safety, relationships, drug and alcohol, safety and careers. Those were the areas in which we are specifically looking for partners as we go forward, but that selection process will happen in the fall. The work that we're focused on right now is on the left-hand side, and that is working with the specific audiences for input and for voice to help to do those two things that I highlighted earlier. That's identify criteria for the selection of partners and figure out in advance how do we engage in this work and do this work in a safe way. And ultimately, the outcome will be new presentations, new partnerships, new organizations that we are working with to provide these supports for our students.
So, Superintendent, I'll just chime in here for a second. I'm noticing that there's a bit of feedback, which I believe is coming from your microphone, and I think it has to do with the placement of your microphone relative to where it might be coming from. I assume it's you. Is
that better or worse?
See, I think so. Yeah. Yes, it sounds better. It was louder than your voice at times, and I found it was taking away from your presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate you stopping me, and I do have the tendency to talk with my hands, but I was being very diligent in not doing that, so I'm not sure what was creating it.
I suspect that's what it was. It was probably rubbing against something.
I guess, yeah. Okay, so if it happens again, please let me know. My apologies. On this slide, providing trustees with an overview of the engagement sessions that have already occurred and those engagement sessions that are scheduled between now and the end of the month. We have had 2 engagement sessions with community partner organizations. These are organizations within our community who have expertise in supporting Indigenous, Black, racialized students, as well as students receiving special education supports and students who identify as Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA+. we had a consultation session with our student senate and the student trustees, students who are accessing special education supports and services, and racialized youth. And you can see that we have a series of other sessions that are planned. So today, a session with Transcend and our Two-Spirit and LGBTQI+ students, Indigenous Education Circle. There is a date change. My apologies in your report on 7-4. It has Indigenous students as April the 21st. It's the 22nd. Parent Involvement Committee and SEAC, Black students, and then the Faith French as a second language and rural schools advisory students committees a little later this month. So our next steps include completing the engagement sessions as well as a thought exchange, which will happen after all of the feedback goes to the working group to work with. So once we've concluded our sessions with the consultation sessions at the end of the month, all of their feedback and all of their input is going to be shared back with the working group that I spoke about a little earlier this evening. And the working group is going to really be focusing on taking that input and honing it in on the two key areas of the creation of criteria and how to do the work in a safe way. That work will then go through a brief thought exchange validation, and then the final report will come forward to trustees in the month of June. Now, I'll share with trustees on page 7-5, and I won't go through them in a lot of detail at this point, but we did want to provide you with what we were seeing from the consultations as emerging themes right now with respect to information that is being shared in the consultations. I will share with trustees that, again, huge appreciation to those who have come out. While there is a very specific and narrow focus around why we are consulting, we have been receiving additional information that goes beyond that, that from a staff perspective, we know it's extremely important to consider and for us to look at how we respond to and how we work with community around some of the pieces that have been raised. So again, very high level, they're outlined for you on the slide. Page 7-5 in the report provides the greater level of detail for trustees. I will highlight just a couple because we've heard about the continuum of care being extremely important in the work that we do, and that while it is important to reach out and to ensure that any speakers that come in use an anti-racism, anti-oppression, anti-colonial lens, that alone does not mean that there will be change in our schools or in the system. So we need to be thinking beyond those in community who can come in. I'll also share with trustees the bullet around rebuilding trust. Again, strong message from the community around harm that was caused by the police liaison program and the importance for us as an organization to name the harm and recognize the harm, and also to look at how we can go about rebuilding trust and addressing the harm that's been caused. So as I said, a number of emerging themes for staff to respond to, but 7-5 just gives you a bit of a sense of what we've seen so far. And of course, all of this is going to go back to the working group at the end of the month. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to respond to trustee questions.
Thank you so much for the report, Superintendent Stefanian. Very important indeed. I'll turn to my colleagues to see if there's any questions or comments about the report. And I do see Trustee Deeth has raised her hand, so I'll turn to you, Trustee Deeth.
Thank you, and through the chair. So just correct me if I'm wrong here, or maybe for clarification. So the police liaison officers, was their objective to be a diversion through building relationships or to coming in and getting to know the students in different ways? Was that not based on diversion, and I know there's some concerns, or there are some legitimate concerns around how it was done. But I'm wondering now, moving forward, I understand that, some of the topics, internet and social media safety, relationships, drug and alcohol awareness, those things tie into creating diversion. But I'm just wondering, are we going to have, whether it's, effective practices or goals set around, ensuring that what we replace the police liaison officers with is working towards diversion?
So I'll turn to the director and perhaps superintendent.
So thank you through the chair. I'll pass it on to Superintendent Stefanian to highlight the focus of what we're looking for. And I just want to highlight there's strong intersectionality and alignment with the Safe Schools Action Plan as well. So I think we look at diversion was one area and one partner that supported around diversion, but the support for students around feeling safe will be broader than that. But to Trustee D's specific question around diversion, I'll pass over to Superintendent Stefanian, please.
So thank you to the trustee for the question. And yes, there's definitely two parts to what the trustee has identified. And so as part of our work connected to the Safe Schools Action Plan, we are looking at diversion and alternative, or what I would describe as alternatives to suspension and expulsion. And that work, of course, will involve collaboration with our community partners around what other types of programs we may be able to look at, other types of experiences that we are able to engage students in as alternatives to suspension and expulsion. Also extremely important when we are thinking about those alternatives, or we're thinking about, I'm going to say globally, consequences within the umbrella of safe schools, that we're thinking about those in ways that are culturally relevant and culturally appropriate and responsive. So very much we'll be working with community connected to our Safe Schools Action Plan around that particular piece. The engagement with community under this particular priority of work is really focusing on programs that have already existed in our schools. So for example, as we mentioned, presentations around internet safety, cyber safety, sexting, school bus safety, bicycle safety. As we think about those programs, which historically would have been provided through the liaison program because of history, now the question is, as we look to community partners, we want to ensure that we are thinking with diligence around how we select a partner who is most appropriate to be delivering those presentations. And then in addition to that, how do we ensure that the partner who comes in does the work in a way that is safe, supported, and included, where all of our students have the opportunity to benefit from that learning experience. Because when anyone comes into a classroom or into a school, it should be a learning experience for students. I hope that answers the trustee's question.
Trustee D.
Thank you. And I mean, it does to a certain degree. I'm just, and I understand, and maybe I'm just not, maybe just thinking out loud with my thoughts, but in a way that makes sense. But it's just that with the police liaison officer, and I guess there's different pieces to what their role was, right? And I think a diversion was one, awareness, and not just for students, because they did training and workshops with parents as well. And I understand that we're trying to, I guess, determine the any gaps or the holes that were left. But I'm just, I guess, and maybe we'll see, I understand this is a monitoring report, and we'll see more of this in June. I just want make sure that we've got some real concrete, this is the objective, this is what we're going to accomplish. And I think even building beyond what the police liaison officers did, because I think that was part of the problem with it, is that it wasn't, I don't know whether the word would be structured, but there wasn't any oversight, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, or accountability around it. So I think as we build out some new pieces of this and how we're going to not just fill those holes, but build on some of this work, or the work that was intended through the police liaison officer role, is just to make sure that we are coming out of this, that we do allow for there to be oversight, accountability around it, and also working towards goals. And I understand that some of it ties in with, with safe schools and some of the work that's being done. And I'm sure that we'll see that work aligned. But I just want to make sure that we are doing it in a way that it all kind of works together and is sort of that, and mapped out, I guess, is my comment. So, but thank you. I recognize it's a lot of work, and I know we've got some great partners. In Hamilton, there's a lot of wonderful partners out there that can contribute to this work. I don't at all doubt the professionalism that's out there and that can fill these gaps. I just want to make sure that as we pull it all together, that it's comprehensive and clear as to the purpose. So, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Deeth. I'll turn to my colleagues to see if anyone has any other comments or questions that they have. I think in the meantime, maybe I'll add myself to the speakers list, and maybe just adding to the discussion that we were just having. It reminded me of a program that was first introduced at the YMCAs of Quebec in 1999 called the Alternative Suspension Program. And it first started at a local school in Montreal, and it later received federal funding from Public Safety Canada to develop into multiple sites across the country, including British Columbia, Alberta, New Brunswick. And the idea of this program was to deter students from dropping out of school, to motivate them to complete their academic year, to reduce the amount of disciplinary actions, and ultimately increase the amount of proactive social engagement within these students. And I think a staple of this program is a realization that they didn't find evidence that supported a notion that police involvement was a way to deter or decrease the amount of disciplinary actions taking place in the school, or even increase the amount of graduation rates. So there's a bit of research on that, which I was actually reading up on this week, which I found really interesting. But this discussion, Trustee Deeth, and that we're having did remind me of that a little bit. But I'll let staff take that away as feedback, perhaps. It's called the Alternative Suspension Program, is what that's called. So I'll turn to trustees to see if there's any other questions, comments, or concerns. I assume, Penny Deeth, your hand is still up from earlier. I don't know if you took it down and put it back up.
It is. Sorry, I'll take it down.
That's okay. That's okay. I thought you were inspired by my comment.
Actually, I am inspired by your comment, and you were helping. Yes, and I think in gathering my thoughts, and that was what I was trying to say, is something like that that's got clear purpose, clear goals, clear expectations, clear accountability. In exactly like you're talking about, a program that's clear on what it's trying to deliver. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that was a problem with the police liaison officer, is that it wasn't clear, and I think that was where the problem lay. But I think if we can come up with something that is very much more specific. So thank you, Trustee Galindo. It was helpful, and that was sort of along the lines I was thinking.
Well, thank you, Trustee Deeth. We're doing cross-table discussion and debate, so I apologize for doing that. But No, I appreciate the comments that were just made. So I'll one more chance for any last minute feedback from trustees. It was a good presentation from Superintendent Stefani, and I appreciate the really important work that's taking place here. So on that note, I'm just taking a look. I don't think there was an action item attached to this item. Bear with me here while I double check. Nope, it was just a monitoring item. But I do need a motion to receive the report. Looking at Trustee Tutt, maybe I'll get, oh, there we go. Trustee Miller will second the report. Anyone opposed receiving the report? And that's unanimous. Thank you so much, Superintendent Stefanian. Now we're into the final item on the agenda, adjournment. I do need a motion to adjourn. Ooh, someone put their hand up first. I think that was Trustee Danko. I'll give it to you this time. A motion to adjourn, Trustee Danko, seconded Trustee Mulholland. All in favor or anyone against? Anyone against? Perfect. Okay, unanimous. Thanks so much, everybody. Meeting is adjourned.
Have a good night, folks.
Good night, everyone.